fine 150 yards. This is a special pair, and it's a Hattons full of grace. And it's Energumene opening up a clear advantage in the closing stages. A breath of fresh air over fences is going to stay at the helm of the 2 mile novices. Energumene by.
Boylesports has it all. Money back meetings every day. UK and Irish racing live streaming. Extra places and money back all losers offers. And a bet 10 get 40 welcome offer. Boylesports, this is betting.
So, hello and welcome back to the Champ.ie podcast, episode number 44 of the season. Like Cheltenham, we're going to do day-by-day videos, joined once again by Mr. Golden Groome, and Steve Hamilton is back. Steve, good to have you on the show again.
It's good to be here, Barry. Really looking forward to Aintree. Great 3 days. A little bit more manageable, I think, than what Cheltenham was. But the Irish have still got big chances.
Absolutely. We'll be looking ahead to each and every one of the 7 races for each of the days of entry. So really looking forward to it. Let's kick off, lads. 1:45 at Aintree, the Manifesto Novices Chase Grade 1 contest. We've joint favourites 13-8 about Banbridge and Stage Star. But I suppose, Ronan Groome, the big question is, what way will the ground be for day one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be actually okay now. There was talk earlier in the week that Banbridge mightn't run, but I've just got the Norwegian weather forecast in front of me here, and the Norwegians are saying there's not that much rain around for the next couple of days. So at Aintree, so could be okay for Banbridge, and I hope it is because it's a good looking race with him in it. Obviously, the two of them are top of the market, himself and Stage Star. Banbridge missed the Turners, much to my dismay. I've had a decent price on him, AntePost, but probably just wasn't going to act on the ground. In any case, just the ground went wrong for him there. He needs it on a decent side. Stage Star obviously won the Turners, did it well from the front, jumped well. Harry Cobb done a great ride, battled well to get the better not long to May when headed. There was a lot of talk that he got a bit of a free lead in front, got things his own way. Yeah, I can see there's a lot of credence to that. Mighty Potter and Appreciated probably a bit disappointing in behind, but I still think he was a good winner, Stage Star. And Banbridge obviously coming back up to 2.5 miles will suit him. His big run at the Dublin Racing Festival is form that sticks out here when he was second to El Fabiolo there, picking up the pieces late, staying on over the 2 miles. So I'll get a hard to split the front two, Basil, I have to say. I'm interested in one at a bigger price, and that's Peter Fahey's Visionarian. I think you get a good price about him on the exchange, and 16-1 with Boylesports. I think he's interested. I don't think there's much to find with Sant Raw, who's in here at 3-1, 7-2 sort of chance. He was second to him in the Grade 1 at Leopardstown at Christmas, pretty close, and he was kept back from Cheltenham. You look at the 6 there, was absolutely a no-show really when he was racing against the likes of El Fabiolo there, but so was Sant Raw. He was, getting close to pretty far back now and close to a perilous position when he came down. Now, people will say that's pretty early in the race, but Visionarian was ahead of him at that point. And if you go back to the run at Leopardstown, as I said, over Christmas, they're both pretty closely matched. And Visionarian's a fresher horse now, 2.5 miles. I think will suit him. Slightly better ground will suit him as well. I can see him running well for Peter Fahey and Keith Donoghue, and I'd possibly just edge him in at a bigger price rather than take a view on the front end of the market.
Yeah, because I had him off his current mark off maybe a high rating in the Grand Annual as on the shortlist. So I totally wouldn't disrespect the Visionarian. As you mentioned, a lot of his form early in the season on a bit of better ground. He's 16-1 at the moment, as you mentioned, with the sponsors. Really sound jumper and stepping up and trip is definitely going to suit him. Banbridge, though, I mean, look, he's obviously been kept for this. He was taken out of Cheltenham due to the ground. We actually saw that, didn't we, last season with Brave Man's Game. Was targeted at the big day at Cheltenham, and he was prepped for that day, turned up at Aintree, a fresh horse seemingly, and bombed out completely. So just be interesting. Obviously he won't want any more rain. I still think the strongest piece of form in the race is Banbridge's second to El Fabiolo in the Irish Arkle. I mean, that was probably the best novice chase of the season, albeit a run at the Dublin Racing Festival. Staying on really, really well over the 2 miles, stepping up and trip, definitely going to suit him. I'd have him of the front two. Stage Star, I think you're absolutely right. I do think the race fell into his lap a little bit. You know, he obviously had an easy lead and was able to quicken 3 out. Harry Cobden was able to control the pace. A really good jumper. 2 really good jumpers in the lineup here, Banbridge and Stage Star at the front end of the market. I think it'll set up nicely for Banbridge. I don't think Stage Star will get taken on for the lead here, but I think Banbridge will be able to sit in behind and pick it up, utilise his jumping. Just to note on Stage Star, his last 3 wins have come on softer ground. So his last 3 chase wins have come on softer ground. I'd be with Banbridge. I think he's coming here a fresh horse. Stepping up and trip is going to suit. I think they'll probably send him off favoured should he turn up. And I think good to soft ground. Look, he won a Martin Pipe on good to soft ground. So the ground, as it is at the moment, provided it doesn't turn soft, is going to be absolutely fine for him. So I'd stick with Banbridge, but I would definitely have massive respect for Visionarian. On ratings, hasn't got too much to find with Banbridge, only £3 officially. So would have respect and, you know, potentially could run a good race stepping up and trip. Steve, what do you think?
Well, I think the pair of you have completely covered the race in fine detail, and I don't really disagree with too much that either of you have said. St. Roy and Visionarian obviously tie in what you said with that earlier piece of form. They shouldn't be that discrepancy in the market between the pair. I agree with that, although I would still have St. Roy in front of Visionarian in my betting. I just feel that Banbridge, this now, coming into it, being, as you've just mentioned, the fresh horse, I think his form is just a bit better than what the rest are. I think the market's pretty accurate in how they're betting, but I would favour Banbridge against Stage Star, simply because I think you've just mentioned that, Barry. Stage Star will, in fact, set the race up for him. He's going to make the running. He jumps really well, Stage Star. He'll be ridden positively. Banbridge is sitting off of him on good to soft ground. I don't think, you know, this course hasn't been raced on for months. The grass is growing. They've had the rain, but the ground will be tight. It's not like the loose, heavy ground that we've been experiencing over the last few months. And with the grass growing now, I don't think it'll be too much of a disadvantage. And I think Banbridge will go there. For me, he's the one they're going to have to beat. That's reflected in the price. I think the price is just about correct, but he would be my pick.
Super. Okay, let's move on to the second of the grade ones. It is the juvenile hurdle, grade 1 over 2 miles and a furlong. Well, of course, so we have a Cheltenham runner here, finished third in the Triumph. Zenta, 13-8 at the top of the market. Bo Zenith, 9-2. Nusray, 9-2. Greyval, 8-1 for Fergal O'Brien. It's 8-1 about scriptwriter and 11-1 and big of the rest. Favourite too short here, Steve, I thought?
I don't think it is.
Oh.
For me, she sets a really high standard. The way she travelled in the Triumph, turning and coming to the last, she had every chance, didn't she? I thought initially, when I watched that race live, I thought she just weakened a little bit up the running. But watching it again last night, she did stick on. And I think that form is head and shoulders above anything that the rest of the field have achieved. Obviously, they're lightly raced horses. They could improve. Bo Zenith, the second favourite, dotted up at Stratford. But that was at Stratford against, as we saw at Cheltenham, UK British trained horses. That form isn't at the same level as what the Irish juveniles have been achieving. And Zenta, you'd have to say, is one of the top half a dozen juvenile hurdlers, especially getting the fillies allowance as well. So I think if she reproduces that Cheltenham run, the rest are going to have to step forward by, I think, 10 lengths plus to get nearer. I think she's got a real solid favourites chance. I wouldn't want to go against her.
Okay, very, very interesting. Because obviously that third in the Triumph on the bare form does definitely look really, really, really strong. But just with the quick turnaround, we saw the Fairy House last weekend. It's quite a quick turnaround once again to Aintree, and gust of wind. I give him a big chance. Finished, was it 5th in the Triumph? Massive chance. Obviously, they've come clear. But I just think the form might have been slightly let down a little bit, maybe, Steve. I'm not sure. It is a quick turnaround. It was a big effort on just a second.
4 weeks, though, Barry. We've had 4 weeks now. And that extra, and it can make a difference. But I haven't seen her in the flesh centre, but looking at her in that race, she looked a typical Mullins, big, scopy, as if she would go on again. And the mere fact that he's running her here, he's got enough horses to choose from, and he's picked her to come here. And I can see him doing that from a form point of view. And I would assume that he knows exactly where she is as far as her physical abilities are at the moment. Whether that's taken an edge off of her or not, he would know. And if there was any doubts, I wouldn't have thought they'd run her here. He's got enough horses, other horses, that he could put in here other than her. I think, I'd find it difficult.
You sound very confident on her, because I actually thought Nuzra was a right bet here. Obviously, coming here once again, a fresh horse could be a good afternoon. Opening 2 races for Joseph O'Brien. I would have give Nuzra, obviously had a high rating on the flat, rated 89, 2 from 4 over hurdles, but the 2 times he's been beaten, Steve, has been on soft ground, soft to heavy ground as well. In that middle part of the season, was impressive at Punchestown at all on hurdles debut, jumps quite well. Dar Jacob did make the point that he felt as though this horse could be a little bit better going right-handed. So interesting. Obviously, his victory was in the Adonis was at Kempton. I thought he was full value for the win. He'd be held up off the pace. There is plenty of pace in here with the likes of Bo Zenit. As you mentioned, Saracen Risks likes to go forward. Perseus Way will be up there. I thought at 9-2 he was a decent bet. He was actually my strongest fancy on the entire card, Nuzra. So interesting. You're strong on Zenta. I'm strong on Nuzra. I think there could be a lot more to come from him, and he's coming here a fresh horse. Ronan, what way do you see it? Settle the argument.
I'm going to side with Steve here, I have to say. Zenta, I think she's pretty rock solid. It's hard to argue with her being that sort of price. She's third in the Triumph, was a huge run. I think Steve makes a very good point. As in, Willie could have ran any amount of his juveniles here. She's only having her 3rd start for him, so they'd err on the side of caution if they thought she was going to be, it was going to hinder her at all, her progress. So she's obviously confident enough to travel her over again. That speaks a lot for where they think she's at physically. And like, if she runs to the standard that she ran in the Triumph, and it's foreseeable that she could actually improve again given her unexposed profile. Even if she replicated her standard of form there, she should win this easily, and she could even improve. So it's very hard to take her on, and the Irish juveniles have been fairly well ahead of the British contingent this season. So obviously Nuzra comes into that as well. If you weren't inclined to take the price about the favourite, one I would suggest maybe as an each way angle or betting without the favourite would be Perseus Way. He's got plenty of experience, and I think he probably should have beat Nuzra at Kempton, bar a couple of pretty poor jumps late on, but it did most of the running that day himself, and just got picked off late on after a couple of slow jumps late on. I wouldn't be too bummed down by his run in the Boodles. That was soft ground and a different type of track, and he ran okay for a lot of that journey, and it didn't see out his race up the hill. I think back on a flat track like this, on better ground, I think he can run much better. So he would be the one that I would look at over the British contingent, maybe each way to run well, but I get a hard to take on Zenta here.
Okay, so lads are strong on Zenta. I'm going to stick with Nuzra. I think there's more to come from him. I think ground is very, very key to his chances. Obviously, all his best form has been on decent ground. So, okay, we're going to move on to the 255. It is an absolute cracker on paper, lads. The Betway Bowl, of course, which is a Grade 1, of course, over 3 miles and a furlong, and all the big names in here. Looks a cracker on paper, Steve, but plenty with question marks over their names.
I remember us speaking at Cheltenham as regards a Plutard. What price do you put it in? Now, another pulled up. Since the Haydock pulled up in the Betfair, what price do you put the horse in now? Because it travelled okay, I suppose, for 3/4 of the race, but then pulled up pretty quickly. It's got a lot to prove, and it's in at 7-2. Unless you know something that the vast majority of us don't know. I don't know how on earth you can back it at 7-2. It's, you know, you could take a chance at a big price, but at those odds, no. Shishkin, what do we do with Shishkin? We spoke about this at Cheltenham, didn't we? And he never went a yard, did he, at Cheltenham? You know, from the off, he was always being niggled. I actually put on my notes after the race, he needs some headgear on. He wants cheek pieces, blinkers, visor,
done the exact same thing as you, Steve, in my notes afterwards as well.
Yeah. And then they've taken the tongue tie off, which it had on at Cheltenham. It had the wind up before it bolted up at Ascot. But again, you've got big question marks against the horse. Will he stay? That's the other question. And he's a 3-1 chance. So you've got two of the front three in the market that have got, you know, double question marks against them. Ahoy Senor, who was going okay in the Gold Cup, but he's still got that tendency to jump right-handed. And it went right-handed when he fell. He was still in front, but I'm around a sharper left-handed track. I wouldn't be 100% with him. GA Law has got massives to find. You must keep coming back to Brave Man's Game. Brave Man's Game beat Conflated in the Gold Cup. Conflated would be the only one that I thought Brave Man's Game would have to be the pick for me. He has to be favourite. In my mind, I've got no doubts about that. If I had to back a horse with him against the rest, it would have to be Conflated, because those two bring the recent form to the race. And I've got them in first and second favourite when I priced this race up last night. And I think there's a chance in the race simply because Saplutard and Shishkin for me are too short. So that's how I saw it. I was Brave Man's Game, Conflated, a possible danger.
Yeah, Conflated second in the race last season. He's probably, there's an argument he said he's a little bit, he's more of an improved animal this season. He was in great form. Gordon Elliott was very happy with him going into Cheltenham. And I mean, met a bit of traffic problems around the bend, didn't he? Sam Ewing, maybe not his greatest hour. And I think you could probably mark the performance up. The question is, how much is it taken out of those Gold Cup horses? I thought, just on the Shishkin thing before I come to Ronan, headgear, yeah. But I think this horse has been crying out for a step up to 3 miles, hasn't he, since day one? I mean, this horse has never, running over 2 miles, you always thought he was going to be better over further. Even in his early days. I mean, I'm starting to come to the conclusion, Steve, even though six of his 12 career wins have come on soft ground, I'm starting to think, is he a horse that just is more effective on a better surface? He won a Supreme Novice Hurdle on soft ground, but as you said, he was never going a yard at Cheltenham this season. And just on the point about Shishkin, he took the third last out of its roots at Cheltenham, and for him to finish 2.5 lengths behind Envoy Allen, I know you said there's question marks, but the bare form isn't bad. I mean, he's possibly almost a career best effort when beating Pictori the time before, and obviously only beaten 2 lengths in a Ryanair chase. I don't think is that bad form. He's unexposed at the trip moving up to 3 miles. I have to say I'd be with him, because if he improves again for stepping up in trip, which I suspect he might. The only worry with him is it's 2 quick runs going to Aintree, which is always a concern. But, I mean, would I back Brave Man's Game? I get what you're saying. He should be favoured. But Brave Man's Game, for me, his form in the springtime, has he won ever in March or in April? It's just a question mark for me.
See, Shishkin, I think the problem with Shishkin now, because he's had the physical issues, he's had the 2 wind ups, he's got the tongue tie, I think it's a mental problem with Shishkin. And horses that ran like he did that last time at Cheltenham, the point that you make that he stayed on after taking the third last with him is correct. He did stay on. But for a horse to have to be ridden, pushed, shoved, nurdled along for the entire race before he did that suggests to me he's just got in his head, he's not too keen at times. Yeah. And it's that type of horse where he's got bundles of ability, headgear can sometimes work. And it could well be we could see that. Obviously, it's not going to happen in this race, but going forward, I could see him putting headgear on him, and then maybe he could come somewhere near his best. What I would say, though, Barry, is that Cheltenham performance, according to my figures, I thought that was nearly a stone below what he had achieved at Ascot.
Yeah.
And Ascot looked to me as if that was his day. And he produced, I'd agree that was probably a career best performance, but he was way below that at Cheltenham. And I don't think I would trust him at 3-1 to come back to his best anyway.
Yeah, interesting. Ronan, what do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree with regard to Shishkin. The drop off from what you got at Ascot to what you got at Cheltenham, and he feasibly still could have won at Cheltenham, but it still would have been a significant drop off in form and what he achieved. And I do take your point that he was never going a yard and still managed to win. So maybe that speaks to the volume of how good the horse is. But I just think there's too many question marks now coming up in Trip, just the way he travelled through that race, and the significant drop off from Ascot to Cheltenham. 9-year-old horse with that's obviously had well documented problem as well. I couldn't be with him at his sort of price, 11-4, 3-1. Braveman's Game has got the best form in the race, I think, pretty much without question. But there's a huge question mark over whether he can get it done at Aintree. He's 0-2 at this festival, and both defeats coming at the hands of a high senior. And you earlier made a good point, Basil, as in last season, he even missed Cheltenham and still was very disappointing here. He came here a fresh horse and it doesn't make any sense at all, because he's a Kempton type of horse, flat ground. He jumps really well. He can travel. He's a real big cruiser. He can travel really well through a race. It makes literally no sense at all that he can't get it done at Aintree, but there's obviously something there. It's pretty, maybe it's not obvious, but from the evidence we've seen so far, 2 starts, he's been way out of kilter with his usual form earlier in the season. So that'd be a question mark over me, although I do accept he has the best form in the race. At Plutard, I think you have to factor in that he was hampered badly at Cheltenham before he was pulled up. But I think he was too far back and it was too far out to draw any conclusion that he was going to run well or anything like that. I think the price by him is a bit short as well. I think you have to have him in that sort of price, but I just wouldn't make any sort of appeal to me. So I would be concentrating on a high senior and conflated for this. A high senior, obviously, he's got a great Aintree record, particularly at this meeting. He was excellent in this race last season. I thought he was jumping pretty well in front. I know he did go out a bit to his right, but he was going at a good pace in the Gold Cup, and I thought he would have been thereabouts down the hill. And again, that's just from my own reading of the race, or gut feeling that he was there, and I think he can go well here again. But Conflated is the one I'm going to side with here. I think you're being a bit harsh on young Sam Hewing. I guess he was more. It was more the jockeys around him that kept him in, like the more experienced guys like Harry Cobden, and it was his first run in the Gold Cup, and he just got the call about 20 minutes before the race. But whatever way you weigh it up, I think Conflated.
He went back for the gap about 3 times though. That wasn't there. So I mean,
I'm just saying he's a young guy and he was having his first run. And I don't think whatever way, if he got the gap first time out, I don't think he was going to finish second anyway. What I would say is he ran a huge race. He was third and he possibly just got outstayed. I think that's very possible that he just got outstayed up the hill. I think coming back to an easier 3-mile one. This race last season, he had a bad fall in the Ryanair, had a tough race there at Cheltenham, but he came back to this race last season and closed up right in on Clan des Obeaux at the line. I think that's pretty good form, and it shows that he can handle a Cheltenham to Aintree kind of, do those 2 tough races in a limited amount of time. The third in the Gold Cup obviously might have taken a bit more out of him, but he's been lightly raced this season. I thought he was really good at Leopardstown. He was not doing a tap in front there when he got in front, and I could see him running well. Out of the 5 in the market there, he'd easily be the one I'd want to side with at his sort of price in what's an absolute corker. So very much looking forward to it.
Absolutely. No, 100%. Constitution Hill wins, I suppose, lads, in the, what is the 3:30. Anyone disagree?
Take him out of the race, Barry. I'd find it hard. You could easily bet each of the other five runners, I don't know where there's all ifs and buts with all of them. He's just completely different year, isn't he? Enjoy him, enjoy watching him, and that's it.
Ronan, anything to add?
No, it's a question of how much he wins by again. There'll be distance sales. I don't know what 12 lengths or more is, but I'd imagine that's in short enough as well. Look, punters might want to have a go without the market. Maybe take him out of the race. That might be a popular market. But as Steve said, there's not much to choose between these two. I think Zana here was possibly unlucky here last season, but booked for second behind Epatante. But I think he might be in a bit better shape than Epatante this year. Maybe he might be the one to chase the Frankel of the jumps home. But not a race I'll be sitting back and enjoying them again.
They couldn't lead him to the third hurdle in the champion hurdle. It was incredible stuff. And I don't know, it might be an unpopular opinion, but I'd love to see them, try going for maybe 3 champion hurdles in a row or something like that, rather than going chasing long term, because I think he's different gravy in that discipline. And that'd be my view on it. But 4:05 at Aintree. Steve, we're coming to you for what is the Hunter's Chase. Now, you were quite keen on the chances of one here at Cheltenham. The horse is famous Claremont, I do believe.
Yeah, he. Again, if you look at the Fox Hunters at Cheltenham, he turned into the straight there, having every chance. And I think when we spoke about the Cheltenham Fox Hunters on this podcast, he, for me, is a horse that's got bundles of speed for a hunter chaser. He can quicken, and he had shown that on a couple of occasions in races prior to Cheltenham. At Cheltenham, turning down the hill, coming into the straight, going to 2 out, he had as good a chance as any. But for me, going to the last, he emptied, and he certainly emptied up the running. A couple of other horses run past him. He was value for finishing a good second now. Now, that form, if you'd have said he got beat 2 or 3 lengths, jumping the last, that for me puts him in this race with every chance. Now, obviously, the things we've got to consider, lots of runners. And although there's lots of runners, lots of them you can discount, but they are in the field. They are jumping around the national course, and you've got to get a clear round. So luck has to come into it. He's got an excellent jockey on board in William Biddick. And I think conditions as they are at the moment would be absolutely ideal for him. I think dropping back to 2.5 is absolutely in his favour. They've put a tongue tie on for the first time. I'm not sure whether that's going to be a positive or a negative. Generally, it's not a negative. That horses generally don't have a negative reaction to having the tongue tie on. So I think he's got a very live chance. The Irish challenger, though, Wing Leader, who just got touched off in last year's Cheltenham Fox Hunters, if you think that the level of form from this year's Fox Hunters and last year's Fox Hunters is at a similar grade, then obviously that one has to come into it. He looked all over the winner at Cheltenham last year and just got touched off by the Mullinsals, who I've forgotten the name of, who never looked like winning, and in the end just got up to win. So he obviously has a chance, but Wing Leader is not being missed in the market. He's put in at 7-2. Famous Claremont now is around 11-2 chance. I would probably have them each of 2, and I think Famous Claremont could just have ideal conditions to show his very best. And the other one I just wanted to mention is a horse called Fair Gagan, horse number 12, who is the same connections who won the Cheltenham Fox Hunters. It's the Bradley Gibbs connections. This horse is dotted up in its points over here. I watched all 3 points. It's won by 50 lengths each time. No opposition could get near him. He is one of those cases. He's only an 8-year-old. He's lightly raced. He is one of those situations where he could be anything. And the mere fact that Gibbs trained the Cheltenham Fox Hunters winner and they're running this, and again, he's not, I thought he might be a bit of a price, this horse, but he's only in at around 11-2. So with him being the same price as Famous Claremont, I would certainly favour Famous Claremont just at the from a value perspective. But he's a horse to keep an eye on, Fairgagan. So really, unfortunately, I think they're the front three in the market: Famous Claremont, Fairgagan, and Wing Leader. And just at the prices available, as I say, I would favour Famous Claremont. But really, I think it's an excellent Fox Hunters. I think we've got a really high grade of horse that's contesting this. And with it bringing the Cheltenham form into it for the past 2 years, I think that enhances how good a renewal it is.
Really interesting, Steve. So, yeah, Famous Claremont it is for the podcast run. Anything to add on Fox Hunters?
No, Steve is very much well more in tune with this form than I am. I tend to avoid these races. I did, just from a very basic look at the race, I did think It's on the Line was interesting again for Emmett Mullins. Obviously second at Cheltenham. He's coming back in trip, but he's very unexposed horse, 6-year-old Derek O'Connor taking the ride for Emmett, which I believe the colours look very similar to the Midnight Club, who Emmett used to ride quite a lot for those owners. It was a good horse back in the day, but I thought 11-1 looked reasonable enough price for him, but a very I won't be having a play in the race, put it like that. So I'd urge viewers to stick with what Steve has gone through there instead of listening to me.
Absolutely. Me too. I echo that, Steve. Absolute whiz kid on the Hunters chases. Right, we're going to move on to the 440 at Aintree. It's the only handicap on day one, and plenty of pace in the race here. Real improver Douglas Talking, 100-30, has been well back. That's the favoured for Lucinda Russell. Steve Mulqueen will take the ride. Of course, Derek Fox in major there as well for the National on Saturday. Brian Hughes rides Mackenberg, who's 20-1. He's a potential rider maybe for Korak Rambler on Saturday should Derek Fox not make it through. But Ronan, this particular handicap, I can't make head nor tail of it. I have to be honest.
The favourite could be pretty tough to beat here. Actually, when you say that, he bolted up at Sandown the last day. I think the old wind ups made a big difference to this horse. He had won previously at Ayr, and he beat it. He only beat a couple home at Sandown, but the Venetia's horse in second sadly died on his next start, but looked very well handicapped coming into that race. Was sent off odds on, and Douglas Talking past him like he wasn't even there. He's got £10 for that, fully warranted, and I think he could be tough to beat here. As you say, a lot of this form, you're taking a lot of exposed horses, I guess. We should mention the 1-2 from last season are in it again. The last day's form has probably tailed off a bit, and he hasn't run that much since. May have had a couple of problems. The Dancing on My Own is back for Henry de Bromhead, who also runs the Fan as well. And Dancing on My Own hasn't been at his best this season either, but coming back into this race, he was coming into this race in similar type of form last season. He ran really well. Only found the last day too good. He was probably well handicapped on the day as well, and the pair of them came clear. He's a 7-1 chance, and it's just interesting Henry has brought him back here as well. He'd be the one that I'd be interested in. I think he's around the 7 or 8-1 mark, but
he showed very little, hasn't he, this season? Very little.
Yeah, but I think he had a similar type of preparation going into the race last season. It wasn't at his best. He was well beaten at Cheltenham on that occasion as well. So I think he could be a different proposition there around Aintree. So he'd be the one, but I'm very respectful of the favourite.
Yeah, just interesting. Global Citizen has come out of the race. So just looking at the pace map, Steve Pryor, and obviously he likes to be up there on the pace. I was going to be coming into the race off, quite a tough race in the Grand Annual. Douglas Talking is running quite rightly said, has had the wind operation, a real improver, jumps very well. Similar breeding, would you believe it, to a high senior? One's running at over 3 miles. This one's running over. Stamina not going to be an issue for this horse by Dylan Thomas. But did you find maybe one at a price here?
Right. I think just to reiterate what the pair of you have said with Douglas talking, he couldn't have been any more impressive at Sandown. Travelling, jumping. I think even if they wanted to, they could make the running with him. So I think he is, out of all of these, he is still the unexposed horse. The issue or possible issue I have is just the handicap mark. And how good is he? Because the race, I wouldn't say it fell apart. He did beat the Gamma Ray, the Venetia Williams horse, as you said. But Gamma Ray was beaten when he took a tumble last time, a fatal tumble. But he's been put up to 10. Plus, he had Wodge riding him, who's been claiming 7, who's riding really well this season. He's off. So, in effect, the horse is 17 pounds higher. Now, you can take a view and say, well, he's a really progressive horse. And maybe 2 runs, he would have gone up by that amount anyway. But in one chunk, to go up 17 pounds, I think there's an argument for thinking he could just be vulnerable. And you've got so many of these that if they came back to anywhere near their best, that they're on fair handicap marks. I think the ones, the 2 that you mentioned from last season's race have been running so disappointingly that you'd be hard pressed to back them. The one horse that I thought would run well, and if they do go a pace, is Pay the Piper. Again, he's pretty much exposed, but he dotted up 2 runs ago at Donny and ran really well last time after getting slightly outpaced, and he kept on. And I could see him running well and be there or thereabouts. But it's one of those which we've spoken about on a few occasions, I think, Barry. I found it difficult to price simply because there's so many of them, I weren't too sure at what stage they are in their career. They look to be, if anything, slightly on the downgrade. Whereas I fully accept that Douglas Talking is the one horse out of the 13 runners we got now that could still be very much on the upgrade and still progressive. So I think it'd be one of those situations that around 7-2, I wouldn't be backing Douglas Talking, but I'd be very wary of going against him because I'm not too sure how many of these are anywhere near have got the level of ability that they once had. Trappy Heat, I think that's what you said.
Yeah, I do think so. If the rain did come, which is probably unlikely to turn up soft really on Thursday, but Grey Diamond is a horse that I think on softer ground, he's 0 from 4 on good to soft ground. I think if it did turn up any, softer ground on Thursday, as we're recording, obviously Wednesday morning, Grey Diamond would be of interest at 7-1. Comes in here off the back of a nice win at Haydock. And off 142, maybe of interest. I won't be having a bet in this particular handicap. Douglas Talking, I think it certainly is an advantage that Global Citizen has been taken out. So he might actually get an easy enough lead, which would obviously play to his strengths. But as you say, the likes of The Last Day and Dancing on My Own, disappointing. But if they did bounce back, they were first and second in it last year, would be massive dangers. But if it did turn up soft, Grey Diamond. But no bet at the moment for me in the 440. The only handicap on day 1 of the Aintree Festival. Lads, the bumper. I picked this one apart, Steve. 20 runners. Lots of them with just the one run. Ronan wants a given opinion on a bumper. But I'm going to ask you, is there anything that maybe stuck out in that bumper? The favourite was really impressive, wasn't she? See You in My Dreams at Newbury.
Right. Well, visually, she couldn't have been any more impressive. She was a bit keen early on, wasn't she? But she won with God knows how much in hand. But how do you evaluate that form? She beat other horses that hadn't run previously. None of them have run subsequently. I couldn't get any angle in. The time was okay, but trying to evaluate what that form is worth is impossible. But again, Nichols is running it. He said after she won at Newbury, this was the target race. This is where she was going to go to. So again, coming from a yard such as Nichols, they know the time of day. They know the ability their horses have got. So that one has to be respected. But again, trying to price the race is, for me, pretty much impossible. The next 2 in the market haven't run for their present yards, have they? They've come. Willie Mullins has got Joli Coeur Alain. And Henry de Bromhead's got July Flower. Both of them have come from France. Both of them have won bumpers over in France. What that form amounts to, heaven knows. And but the mere fact that they're in the market and look to be fairly solid in the market as well, you know, that those two horses, it's one of those situations I could see them being 4 or 5 to 1 chances. I could see them being 20 to 1 chances. I've just no idea what that form is worth. So in summary, the ones that I've seen, and I looked at quite a few of these that have run over in the UK, See You in My Dreams does look to be the horse with potential. She could be anything. She's from a top yard, and all that has to be taken into consideration. But that is all reflected in a price of what, 7 to 2. So makes little appeal to me from a punting perspective, but a really interesting race going forward. I think there'll be some decent mares in this.
Yeah, how do you pick this one apart? 20 runners, the favourites 100 to 30. Just one that I would give a mention to. And if anyone was looking for someone, if anyone was looking for a horse each way at a big price, double figure price, Brian Hughes takes the ride on Casanumento. And this absolutely bolted up, was point-to-point winner for Bradley Gibbs and bolted up at Hereford on debut. This daughter of Casamento. She finished second in the listed bumper that Lucia won last season at Sandown, but that was on really testing conditions. It was heavy ground. I'd say this horse, she's bred to like a little bit of better ground. And the way she won, she oozed class, I thought, at Hereford. I think this horse at 16 to 1, maybe for Nigel Twiston-Davis, might represent a little bit of value. As you mentioned, we haven't seen the Mullins mare or the Bromhead mare on the race course in Ireland, and they're obviously coming here first run for the yards. Could be absolutely anything. Die Sardinas, that bet, of course, Queen's Gamble at Market Raisin, that looks decent form. But after that, you're looking down the field. One of the double figure prices mentioned, Casanumento, 16 to 1. Brian Hughes riding for Nigel Twiston-Davis. Might give you a good run for your money in this particular contest. Lads, before we wrap up day one, best bets of Aintree Day One. We're going to come to you first, Steve. Best bets on the card.
I would go, and this is opposing you to, I think, in Brave Man's Game in the bowl. I think he sets the standard. And although you highlighted some negatives about form in the spring and what have you, I think he brings the best form to the race. I think conditions are ideal for him. And at the price, I think he deserves to be favourite. And I would also put in Famous Claremont. I think Famous Claremont is sure to go well. And they would be the two that I'd be most interested in on day one.
Best of luck, Steve. Ronan?
Yeah, the tricky first day, I would probably just go with one. And I'd say take on Steve with Conflated. I think he's possibly overpriced a little in the big race, the big 3 miler. I think he can outrun odds of 11 to 2 or 6 to 1 thereabouts.
Steve, we're ganging up on you because I'm taking you on in the juvenile race. I'm going to go Nuzray for my only actually bet on the card on day one. I found it a really tricky card on Thursday, and Nuzray, fresh horse, back on a bit of better ground. Bit of a short turnaround in terms of, Cheltenham to Aintree for the favourite. I think, at 13 to 8, it's worth taking her on. Nuzray, I think there's more to come on better ground. So in the juvenile race number 2, the 220. And I think the race will be run to suit. Plenty of pace in the race. This likes to come from off the pace. So that'll be my logic. Lads, we'll be back for day number 2, of course, recording on Thursday morning, 10:30 a.m. For the Friday card, and of course National. Then we'll be looking ahead to the Grand National on Saturday, on Friday morning. But just a note as well, Steve's details on screen at the moment as well. If anyone does want to get in touch with Steve, of course, advisory service, has been doing this a long time, 33 years in total punting. Get in touch with Steve, he'd love to hear from you, and his details up on screen at the moment. So there we go, lads, absolute pleasure. Looking ahead to day one, a tricky card, I think we all can agree.
Yeah, but say tricky, hopefully, I think if a couple of those ones that we fancy between us, I think should go in. So hopefully it'll be a tricky but profitable first day.
Absolutely. Lads, talk to you tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m.
Inside the final 150 yards, this is a special pair, and it's And it's Energumene opening up a clear advantage in the closing stages. A breath of fresh air over fences is going to stay at the helm of the 2 mile novices. Energumene by.
Download the Boylesports app and receive generous offers for new and existing customers. Boylesports, this is betting.